Mark Skaar on the Skaar Kaard on 103.7 The Fox. I'm proud to welcome back Mr. Greg Chaisson to talk about the Atomic Kings. Greg, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
The last time you were here, you were a different kind of king. Kings of Dust.
Yes, I was.
Now you're an Atomic King.
That's a couple steps up. So that's a couple steps up from Dust.
Let's start there. Let's talk about the change between the two bands and what changed, and for the benefit of our listeners who might be following along.
Well, I had a band called Kings of Dust, and we put out a record that we liked, and it got a lot of positive response, but we were starting to rehearse for just some shows, and things weren't exactly gelling right as far as what we thought things would be like for a live performance. And so we had some concerns about the singer from Kings of Dust. And so we were trying to work through that and seeing what was going to happen with that. Well, then COVID hit, and so we weren't going to be able to do any live shows, so we started writing new material, and that wasn't working out either. And it seemed that he was distracted. And we found out a few months later that he had actually joined another band. And so he was kind of splitting time between this other band and us. Now, him joining another band, that's one thing, but the fact that we didn't get to hear about it, we had to hear about it through the grapevine, not a couple weeks later, 4 months later. And that was an issue for us. So when we brought it up, it kind of brought everything to the forefront. And we just decided, because of that sort of thing, and also because we weren't super thrilled with what was being written in the studio, that maybe it was time to make a change. So we just decided that he should go his way and that we should go ours. In his defense, he did a really good job on the Kings of Dust record, and he was one of our best friends and all that sort of thing. But sometimes, as with a lot of musical situations, we just kind of came to an end with it. We felt we were at the end of the creative journey that we could take with him, and we wanted to kind of go in a slightly different direction, a little bit more bluesy, a little bit more along the Bad Company, Free, Zeppelin sort of thing, and we wanted a singer that kind of fit that bill a little bit more. The previous singer had more of a heavy metal thing, he got compared a lot to Jeff Tate, which is not a bad thing, obviously. Mm-hmm. But we wanted to go with something a little bit more soulful. And so we parted company, and I already had a guy in mind, which ended up being Ken Ronk. I had been doing a project with him, cover project that wasn't going to work. It ended up not happening, but I enjoyed working with Ken. He's a really nice guy. He's widely considered the best vocalist in this area, in the Phoenix area, and everyone likes him. He's a super nice guy, it really kind of is a good counterbalance to the fact that I'm such a prick. So Ken's nice guy kind of makes up for my surly my surly outlook on things. And so we just had Ken come down, and he started singing some of the new material that we were writing, and he fit right in. He's a very soulful kind of singer, and that's exactly what we wanted.
Talking with Greg Chaisson about Atomic Kings, the new record, and so the name change happened, and the new vocalist came in. So tell me about, you started writing this during the pandemic. Tell me about the process of writing material for this project.
Oddly enough, the first song we had written was All I Want, which is the first single off this record. All I Want was a song that I had actually written in 1978. And so when we talk about that our influences are very 70s style-wise, we're not kidding, because that song had it for that long. And I actually submitted it to be on the Kings of Dust record, and the singer didn't like it. So we just moved on to other things. Well, when we started writing for Atomic Kings, once we got Ken in the band, that's the first song I brought out. I said, look, I know that this was kind of rejected at one time, but I want to give it another shot, and it ended up turning out to be really great. The process usually involves either me or Ryan coming in with a riff or a verse or a chorus or both or whatever, and then him and I will kind of work it out. He works with me at Bizarre Guitar in Phoenix, the store that I run. And so we get a lot of time just sitting around where we'll work on a tune, and then we kind of get a very, very loose arrangement of it and then we play it for Jimmy, and then he starts putting his stuff on it, and then by that point Ken has shown up, and then he starts immediately writing for it. So it's a very organic sort of way of doing it. We don't have any preconceived notion of what the song's going to be other than it's going to be an Atomic King song, and it's going to be good, and we're going to like it. And that's kind of where that all falls into place.
Greg, would you say the rest of the songs on the record were written collectively by all of you besides All I Want?
Yeah, I mean, again, like it might be something like Live, song Live. I brought it in. I had a bunch of it there, then Ryan threw in a couple parts, and then Jimmy jumps in, and that was a really quick song, like a 15-minute song. Or something like Take My Hand, which Ryan came in with the original riff and verse. I wrote a chorus, then we went into this bridge that I came up with. Then we came into this whole other, the Evil's Easy top part that happens in that song. And then collectively we're all involved with it. But it could be something as different as there's a song on the record called Running Away, and that starts with Jimmy was playing that drum beat. Ryan and I really liked it. Ryan started writing a verse to it. I wrote a pre-chorus. We discussed what we wanted in a chorus. Ryan wrote one, and then Ken got involved as well. And then there's a song on there called Jimmy's Page, which is just kind of a 2-minute musical interlude into another song, and Jimmy wrote that and actually played the acoustic guitar on it. So we don't have any rules of where it comes from. Everyone has to be involved in the writing process. That's what makes it a song. Even if Ryan brought in a whole song, we would all get involved in it, and it would probably be dissected. There's a song called All I Want, which I wrote the bulk of, but by the time that Jimmy puts in his parts and Ryan puts in his and Ken puts in his, then we're all involved on it. And it's really almost hard to tell who wrote what at that point. Matter of fact, Ryan and I were listening to some older stuff that we had been working on that we're going to resurrect for this next record, because we kind of just wanted 8 or 9 songs on this record. So we had a bunch of other ideas, and we were sitting there going, did you write that part or did I write that part? So now we're kind of at the point where we can musically finish each other's sentences. And that's kind of a good problem to have, because there's no argument, there's no ego about who wrote what. Hey, man, we got to do my song because I haven't wrote a song in a while and no one's listening to my song. There's none of that. We have so much material, and we're always writing. As a matter of fact, in our show, we do 2 songs that aren't even on the record. We're always writing. We're always coming up with new bits, new riffs, new this, new that. Jimmy has a drum beat that we're going to write a song to. And at some point, even Ken will submit a song. I mean, he's a good writer. He kind of likes what Ryan and I write. And so we're just kind of there. Talking
to Greg Chaisson about Atomic Kings. Greg, where was the record recorded?
We signed with a label out of Las Vegas, Tone House Records, and they have a studio up there. But what we did is, if you've ever seen that show, Counts Customs, where they basically renovate cars. Well, the guy that owns that TV show has a really nice recording studio up there, Danny Coker. So we went and recorded bass and drums and rhythm guitars up there in a 2-day process. And then Ryan came back up to our producer studio, Chaisson, and did his leads and some other rhythms. And then we decided to do vocals down here in Phoenix, just because it was more convenient for Ken to go to Ryan's house as opposed to flying up to Vegas. The whole process of, getting picked up at the airport, getting situated. In Phoenix, he could just show up at Ryan's studio, and it's called Alley Works, and come in. He has a vocal booth there, and he just comes in and sings. So there was a little trial and error with all that, but it ended up becoming really good. And the drums and bass sounds kind of speak for themselves. He has a really good drum room up there at Counts Customs studio. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of his studio. Forgive me. And we got really good drum sounds, which is something that we really wanted to focus on, was to have better drum sounds than on the previous record that me and Jimmy and Ryan were involved in. I always thought that was what was lacking, was the drums. And so the drums were the main concern, get a good foundation and then put everything else on top of it.
Talking to Greg Chaisson, yeah, I really love the separation of all the instruments and you can hear everything clearly, what's going on. It's all kind of separated out, but yet has cohesion, and that's what you want.
Well, that was the thing about mixing it. We had been talking to other labels and other producers about recording with them, and we would listen to what their samples were, and I remember thinking, not exactly hearing what I want, and I don't think they really have a very good understanding of what it is we do, because we are very 70s, and our style of recording, or the way that it should end up sounding pretty 70s with a little bit of a modern take on it. And so when we finally started talking to Jason, he sent some samples, and he was the closest of anything that we'd heard. It wasn't exactly what we were looking for, but we thought that he could probably get what we wanted. And the other thing is we wanted to be involved in the mix of it, because no one really understands what Atomic Kings should sound like better than us. Mm-hmm. So the way that it was mixed is Jason would do a preliminary mix up in Vegas, and then he'd send it to us, and then Ryan and I would basically listen to it in my truck, which is where is my listening room, so to speak. And then we would send it back, and we would do that a couple times till we got it pretty close to what Ryan and I thought. Then we would send a copy over to Jimmy and over to Ken, and then they would make whatever suggestion that they wanted to make. And then after, it would take maybe 4 or 5 different times back and forth, and then by then we had a mix. So the separation was important. The drum sounds were super important to all of us. And then my style of bass playing, it needed to have its own place in the mix, because it's kind of covering for what a lot of rhythm guitar would be doing, like in a solo and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like having an extra guitar in there, the tone that I get. So we knew that the guitars and vocals would sound good, because that's probably the easiest part to mix. Most guys that you get involved with in mixing, they know that the vocals are supposed to be in a certain spot, and the guitars are the other thing. The hard part is to get drums and bass the way you want it, and I think we kind of nailed it on this. We're pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I agree. Or with Greg Chaisson. Greg, let's point people in the direction of, if they want to buy the record or buy merch or keep in touch, how can they best do that?
Well, you can always keep in touch with me through our Facebook page, which is Atomic Kings. We have a Instagram page, which is Atomic Kings Band, and that'll keep you up to date on what we have going on. If there's a possibility of a show somewhere or whatever, I know we're going to play in Vegas sometime this summer, and there's a chance for an LA show, and there's to talk about some shows possibly in Texas. So that information will all be there. If you want to buy CDs, T-shirts, any kind of merch, you go on the Tone House Records site, and that's the name of our label. So it's TONEHOUSE Records, and you can get the CD there. You can also get a large array of merchandise, where there's T-shirts, hats, bandanas, stickers, all that kind of stuff. So he'll be able to take care of you there. There's a number of things on YouTube you can see. We have a lyric video on there. If you have a second, go on there and take a peek at that. And we'll be doing another lyric video coming up soon, and then we're going to do an actual video at some point. So we're going to be pretty busy. So there'll be a lot of Atomic Kings things going on, and hopefully people can buy it, and hopefully they'll enjoy it and like it and all that sort of thing. And if you do that through our Facebook page, make sure you say hi to me, and I'll say hi back.
Love it. He will. Think he won't? Yeah, he'll do that. Greg, Greg, thank you as always. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the support, and it's great to speak to you again. And when we get to Atomic Kings number 2, I hope to be able to talk to you then as well.
You'll be back for sure. Greg Chaisson from Atomic Kings, my guest on the Skaar Kaard, the new classic rock that rocks, right here on 103.7 The Fox.